This is my master's thesis and this is my PhD thesis. And whilst they are quite similar, they also differ extensively. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how they differ and the differences between how they're assessed, what their content is, and what you can expect from both of them. So the main difference is that the PhD thesis is a result of original research and original data. So the premise of a PhD is that you as an author, so me as a PhD student, I'm working on something original, that means something that no one has looked at before, no one has published anything about before, and the main category, the main thing for when an examiner is looking at your PhD thesis is the fact that the data that has been published and that has been printed within it is original. That's number one. A master's thesis, this is not the case. The master's thesis, whilst it does work on new kind of research, it does not have to be original. It is based off of the methods or an application of someone else's work. So usually what you're doing in a master's thesis is you've got your supervisor, you're in your lab, you will take their work and you'll kind of take a little subsection, they'll give you a little bit for you to do. So whilst you can publish, and actually all the data that I did for my master's, it ended up in 2 research papers that were published later on. It by itself is not original work. So it by itself makes up part of a bigger project, whereas the PhD thesis, it itself is a research paper. So it itself is substantial enough to be published as original work, whereas this isn't. Okay, the next thing is the time that it takes to complete the work, the length of how long it takes, and the length of the actual thesis itself is very different, as you can see. So this is my PhD thesis. It is, how many pages long is it? It is 217 pages long, very long. Whilst my master's thesis is not as long, it is only 70 pages. So not as long at all. And mine were both in the fields of, this is cell and developmental biology, and this one is in the field of neurotrauma, like neuroscience, and TBI, traumatic brain injury. This took me 6 months to write, so part of your grant includes thesis writing, sometimes, not always, but it does include thesis writing, so that means you do 3 years of a PhD, and then after that you are allowed to take off. I took 6 months to write. So during that 6 months, you are kind of in and out of the lab. Sometimes you realize that, oh, I need to redo this experiment, or I don't have enough data, or my graph isn't quite right, or my images aren't quite right. So you are sometimes having to go back and forth. And I was kind of doing some experiments to consolidate some things, but you can take some time out. People will go traveling and do writing retreats abroad and just, go and write in peace. Whereas with this, it just takes a week or 2 of sitting down, a few weeks of sitting down and writing. So not as much time. And the main difference for what the length is the fact that this is quite broad. The data in this and the information in this, when I'm looking back at it now, I'm like, wow, that is really, really broad. I just wrote about, so colony PCR, I wrote 3 lines about PCR. Whereas in here, my PCR page is 2 pages. And it's the fact that you're writing at such a low level. At the time, I thought this was pretty high level stuff. But looking back at it now, I'm like, this is so simple, it's so basic, because it really is. Your master's thesis is just skimming the surface of the understanding and the knowledge that you need. Whereas your PhD thesis, the PhD thesis is in depth. You're really going into the concept, you're going into the theories, you're going into the literature, you're critiquing, you're finding you're finding ways to find limitations, you're finding ways to find new knowledge and answer questions in novel and innovative ways. And so you really have to go in depth when it comes to your thesis. And even just thinking about what I did during my time, during my master's thesis, I don't think I went, during my master's I don't think I even went to a single conference or seminar. Maybe I went to one, but I wasn't very active within the research field. It was very much I have to do this thesis. Whereas during my PhD, I was engrossed into my topic. I used to go to seminars. I would put myself forward for poster presentations, and I would want to learn more about the field. I'll speak to people, I'll collaborate, I'll be emailing people that I think are interesting. I'm constantly searching PubMed for new papers, new research that comes out. I'm attending things online, and I'm traveling across the world to go to seminars and conferences that are, that are interesting. And you're really, when you're a PhD student, that topic and that research field becomes second nature to you. Like, it becomes everything to you. Like, you become it. You are you are the expert of it. You really truly are. And it's such a small field. It's such a small aspect of the overall like field and the overall breadth of knowledge that you're focusing on such a small area, and you really become the expert, which is why I always say that the Viva is not examiners testing you, because you know more than them. This is your expertise. They are just having an academic discussion with you. So yeah, that's the main difference between these two. Like, looking back at this, I feel like a master's student. Looking back at this, I feel like an expert in my field. And the research PhD journey is not an easy one by far, but there are so many resources and tools that you can use to help you along that journey. This segment of the video is kindly sponsored by researcher.life, which is a subscription-based platform that offers tools and services to help researchers thrive at every step of their journey. Researcher.life has a range of tools and services that include writing, publishing, reading, citing, learning and networking, and also illustrating and promoting your work. On sign up, you get access to 11 free tools, and this is all part of the Essentials pack. And I'm going to run through a couple of my favorites. So the first is called Mind the Gap, and this is a tool that allows you to illustrate. It has a number of different templates. You can choose from molecules, from different backgrounds. You can add titles and text and graphs. You can generate really beautiful scientific images from it. The second is our upskill courses, and one of my particular favorite ones is about writing a literature review, as you can see here. The next is Paper Pal, and I've spoken about this so much before because I absolutely love it. It is an academic writing assistant. You've got a Word plugin as well, which corrects your work for you as you write. The next benefit is Our Discovery, and Our Discovery allows you to discover new papers that are relevant to your field and set up your own literature reading feed. And these provide you with papers that are relevant to your topic and allow you to be always on top of your reading. Last but not least, this is the submission readiness checker, and allows you to upload your manuscript and check if your manuscript is ready to be submitted to journals. And as you can see here, I've uploaded something that is not ready at all. It's absolutely not something that I would submit to a journal. So you can see that the percentage is really low, and it shows you exactly what the issues are in terms of your language, and allows you to know what to correct to get accepted by a journal. With the Essentials pack, you get a hint or a trial of all these amazing tools. However, the Prime pack has a lot more in store for you, where you get access to longer subscriptions of each of these benefits, and you can keep using them for a much longer period. The Prime pack is exclusive membership for researchers, where you get access to over 15 premium benefits that are worth $999 at the cost of only $99 a year. It's like $8.25 per month. And there's so much value because there are so many leading brands within the researcher.life group, and this allows you to save so much valuable time, but also save money on all the resources that they offer. So check out the Prime pack. I'll leave the link for it in the description box down below. There's also a 10% discount code with the code Amina10, which I'll leave over here, so feel free to try it and let me know how you find it. Next difference is to do with the examiners. So how is your thesis actually examined? So let's start with the master's. The master's thesis is usually not really examined in a really formal way. You simply submit this to your professor or usually it's the course organizer, but anyway, you submit it to someone within your university. So it can sometimes be double marked. So sometimes it'll be marked by 2 people, but usually it's just marked by 1 person. You'll get a grade, and Bob's your uncle. You may need to do a presentation, so sometimes they'll ask for a presentation of your work, and that kind of comes as part of your module. So there'll be, as your master's, there'll be like a module that you do, which is a majority, will be like maybe 75%, 80%. And within that includes a presentation. So you have to actually stand there in person and present probably to your group, and that's it. That is your assessment pretty much, and that's as far as it goes. So it's all internal. This is where it differs a lot to this bad boy. Now, this bad boy does a lot of journeys and loads of air miles, train miles, or car miles, road miles. This guy does a lot of it. So what happens is you have 2 examiners. You have an internal examiner and an external examiner. So your internal examiner, for my case, would have been someone at UCL University. And then your external examiner is someone outside of UCL. You need to have like no affiliation, so it's usually someone who you haven't like published a paper with, or you're not like collaborating with, of course, so there's no bias. Now, what happens is you print out your thesis, you print 2 copies out when you initially submit it, and you take it to the graduate school. So UCL has like an office, like a graduate school office. You go there, it's like a counter, and you give your 2 theses to them. And it gets shipped away to the external examiner, and then an internal person gets it as well. And there's actually a stamp right there. The stamp right there. It says dispatched to examiner, bam. And that was on the 1st of August 2017. And it gets dispatched to the examiner, and that is the last you hear from it for a little while, like actually. I think my Viva was in November. And then once you've actually completed your Viva and you've got your corrections, so you might have like spelling mistakes or redo experiments or add a section or whatever corrections you have to do, you make those corrections and then you resubmit it. So you either, if the corrections are minor, then there's no resubmission. You just have to print it out again, give it to the grad school, and then it ends up in in somewhere. And you also submit it to the UCL online repository, which is where all the UCL, or any university does this, but all the theses are there. So that's one thing that you do with this. So this guy does a journey. Like the internal and external examiners need to be in sync when it comes to what they think about your thesis, and they write their comments and they will say what they think, and then yeah, you deal with that. Last but not least is the assessment methods. So as I mentioned, the examiners, that's internal and external, and then assessment is usually a presentation for this, as I mentioned, and for this it's the Viva, as I mentioned. So it's the fact that they want to see you in person. With your PhD thesis, they have to see you in person. It's not enough to just have a thesis, print it, and then submit it, and you've got your PhD. And you have to engage in academic discussion about your work, and that kind of validifies the fact that you are the person that did this work. So yeah, it's really important that that is also kind of completed as part of the PhD process. If you don't attend your Viva, you fail your PhD. So actually, this thesis, the existence of this thesis, is all because I attended my Viva and I passed my Viva. So this, no. This, yes. So yeah, that is the main difference between a PhD thesis and a master's thesis. I hope that gave you some information and some insight into the differences. At the time of doing a master's, you probably think that this is the most difficult thing in the world, but actually it really isn't. Like, the thesis is so much bigger. The master's is really just a little thing that you have to do to get past. But the PhD thesis is really like, it encompasses all the hard work and all the hours and all the time spent, getting all that research done. But also don't forget to check out researcher.life for all the tools and packages as I mentioned above. And the link will be in my description, and there's also be a discount code which I'll leave down below as well. And let me know what you thought. Did you think that the difference would be so stark between the two? But yeah, if you enjoyed this, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to see more from me on the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.